All right. So welcome back to the session. We do have a few more sessions this late afternoon for us. And the next speaker is myself. So I'm going to share my presentation. I don't think that I need any introduction, but I will introduce myself. So I'm a professor in veterinary pathology from the School of Veterinary Science of the University of Queensland in Australia. And what I want to talk about today in my presentation is giving you an update on the Australian Companion Animal Registry of Cancer called ACARCinom, and in particular, how we got to the point to have and to launch our Registry of Cancer. So what we've been doing in order to launch our cancer registry in November last year. Now, the problem that everyone is facing in their own country is that we don't have data on cancer, and the situation is quite similar in Australia, because although there are more cats and dogs than human beings in Australia, we don't have any information about prevalence of tumor or most common tumors, most common affected breeds, age, sex. We don't know, for example, in which Australian state there's the highest number of reported cases or which suburb. And the other challenges that are common to any cancer registries in the world is that cancer is not reportable in animals as it's happening in human. And we did have some, reports or descriptions of cancer cases, but they've been very sporadic or using different methodologies or different populations. So those studies are not actually comparable. And, we are in the era of artificial intelligence. So what I did a few days ago is interrogating ChatGPT, and I asked the system to help me in understanding the incidence of cancers in Australia. So I asked ChatGPT, what's the most common tumor in dogs in Australia? And, the prevalence of specific tumors can vary, or we don't have any specific information in cats. So what's happening is that even the AI is not helping or is not helpful in understanding the numbers of cancer cases in Australia. And this is why we have built the ACARCinom infrastructure. So it has been a long journey that started actually in 2020, 2021. And ACARCinom is getting data from veterinary pathology labs from different academic institutions. So we do have the University of Queensland, Adelaide University, Murdoch University, University of Sydney. And then we do have 2 private diagnostic labs on board, Gribos Veterinary Pathology and IDEX. And the data are transferred into the data warehouse of ACARCinom. And we're going to use the data to analyze trends and patterns in animal cancers. And we do have postcodes, so we can actually map the distribution of cancers and trying to understand if there are some environmental factors leading to different cancer hotspots. And also one of the partners in this project is the coordinator of the Australian Human Cancer Atlas. So in the future, what we want to do is just to do those comparative studies with human cancers. But I want to take a step back and just to tell you the story and how we actually came to build this infrastructure. And actually, when we started this project, and I had to look at what are the requirements of a cancer registry. So what we need to have in place in order to make sure that our data are quality data. And if you look at the definition of cancer registries, there are 4 indicators to measure data quality in cancer registries. So you need to make sure that your cancer registry, in a way, is aligned with those 4 measures of data quality. Completeness means that the majority of data that you have in the population of cancer data are actually captured in your registry, because otherwise it's impossible to determine incidence rates or prevalence rates. Then validity means that the data with that attribute is actually capturing your system. And that means that in a way depends on the quality of the source, your pathology report, and even the skills of whoever is coding, whoever is capturing data. Comparability means that your cancer registry has to be comparable with other cancer registries. So it needs to be aligned with international standards. And the last one is timeliness. So it means that, of course, we want to have real-time data. So it's the speed you are using in order to capture data, clean data, transfer data, and have data in your database. Now, you need to keep those measures of data quality in mind in order to have a cancer registry. But then you are also thinking about your issues and how to sort those issues out in order to have quality of data. Now, in humans, they don't have any issues at all because they have guidelines. They have there is an International Association of Cancer Registries. They have manuals. They have standard guidelines for cancer registration. So all the information are actually there. We don't have that now. We do have a nice veterinary coding system that we have in place, but we don't have that type of organization as the Human Cancer Registry has. And then we also cannot really use the same information or the same level of standards as the Human Cancer Registries, because we are reporting cancer cases in a very different ways. For example, we don't have the information about staging of the tumor, or they are classifying tumors, they are using markers, they are using further investigation tools. And we don't have that information either in pathology reports. Sometimes even the most important information are missing. So it was quite hard to use the same level of standards for our cancer registry. The second issue that many cancer registries have is the lack of uniformity in data reporting. So this means that each lab is using their own format for patient and case information. And of course, that's really tricky, especially if you're dealing with many data providers. I just want to show you something. So an example of the different type of formats that we are using for our ACARCinom database. For example, there are some data providers, I can talk about this because it's from the University of Queensland, so it's us, that in which the data are just stored in this big free text format. So the information are there, but you need to find them. Or other data providers in which the data are extracted in columns. So the information are more organized, but again, for example, the diagnosis side of the tumor, they are in a particular column. So see, the two data formats are very different. And you need to have a system in place that is able to extract data, recognize that those are different formats and where the information are. The third issue that we have identified when building our cancer registry is the lack of uniformity in terminology. So sometimes when I'm talking to other people about this, they say, oh, I'm paranoid. I'm too pedantic. Why bothering about terminology or terms? It's very messy, because think about it, you have different data formats, different pathology reports, and there are pathologists writing transitional cell carcinoma, other urothelial carcinoma, or malignant lymphoma instead of lymphosarcoma. That's the same entity, it's just different names. So, and that's very important when it comes to extract data from those different databases. So the lack of uniformity in terminology is actually very important. And Jose talked about data dictionaries. I will stress that even more, because having a standardized cancer vocabulary is actually the first thing that you are doing when you're building a cancer registry. So keeping in mind those different quality measures and the issues, we had to have an approach in place. So see, I'm not even talking about our database yet. It's just a preliminary work that we've been doing to build our Australian Cancer Registry. So the first thing that we did, and I'm also always recommended to do, is to have your data requirements. So when you want to build a cancer registry, you need to think about what are the information that you want to have in your database. What are the inclusion and exclusion criteria? Now, the International Association of Registry for Cancer defined basic and minimum level of requirements. So without those information, those items, a cancer registry can't work. So of course, there are other essential variables. So human cancer registry, they use so many other different information, but it's not realistic to think that we have that level of information. So I started to look at the basic information for cancer registry, and we came up with our standard requirements. So we said, okay, in our database, what we want to have is the source of data, of course, the year, month, because we want to see even the monthly trend, patient ID and reference number, so the pathology number and even the patient ID number, because in the future, if you want to get clinical data, that is quite important. The postcode, because for confidentiality issues, we can't have the address of the owner of the animal. So the postcode or the suburb, consultation date, species, breed, sex, castration status, date of birth and age. And then we want to have, of course, type of tumor, the topography of the primary tumor, the topography of the metastatic tumor eventually, the grade, and also an epidemiologist of the group. She came up with an idea to include the certainty level. So, you know, all those words that we are using in the pathology reports, favoring or most likely, we are also capturing that because we want to see even the degree of certainty in the pathology diagnosis. And we are including all cancer cases in dogs and cats confirmed by histopathology. So we are not including any, for example, necropsy without histo or cytology cases. And we're excluding even those with uncertain diagnosis. For example, if there is sarcoma versus carcinoma, we are not using that case. So define your minimum data requirement first. And then you need to see what's coming. So what we did first is analyzing small data sets. So we got 100 cases from each data provider, and we analyzed them. So what is the format? Where is the format stored? In which part of the pathology report? So you need to do a very thorough analysis. And this helps for training the system. So for example, this was an analysis that I did of data extracted from one of the universities. So those are the items in their extracted data. And then I've analyzed them saying, okay, when they say request, that's the reference number, okay? And then I talked to the software engineer saying, look, when you see request, that means that it should be our reference number. And the sex sequestration status are under gender. And then you can find topography, diagnosis, grade under diagnosis of the extracted data. So we did the same analysis for every format that we received from the data provider. Of course, the main issue is when you have to get information from topography and diagnosis, because it could be in any part of the text. So in order to train the system, you need to tell the system where things are. Otherwise, it's impossible to extract data from that pathology report. And then define your standards. So Jose built this vocabulary, I built the vocabulary too. So maybe we could have worked together to build the same vocabulary. So we have a dictionary for topography, diagnosis, grading, certainty level, breed, canine, postcode, feline breeds, with all the different options. So in British English, American English, whatever, so that if the system has the opportunity to recognize that even when it's written in a different way, or as a synonym, or in acronyms, he needs to go back to the standards. So that's why I said that the data dictionary is actually one of the first things you are doing in your own language. And then, of course, tell the system that it needs to allocate codes to those terms. So in the ACARCinom, our platform is able to allocate codes automatically. So for example, this is what I built to train the system, and I feel the pain. Jose pain, it was my pain, because it's 1,000 of terms. So this is my Excel file, and this is now what's in the ACARCinom. So it's actually, the ACARCinom has the standard name, the code, color coding, and then all the different options. And the beauty of this system is that if we change the code, even in the future, is able to apply the code, the new code, to all the data and cases that are already imported in the system. And then defining the standards means also learn how to code, because it's not just putting numbers. You need to know something about the tumor. It's not as easy as it could be. So we designed a system, even like our internal guidelines for coding, especially when you do have multiple tumors, same tumor in different locations, different tumors in the same location, systemic tumors. So we created a flowchart that is defining how we have to code things. Because of course, the machine is good, but it's not perfect. So in that case, it's the human intervention that is important to tell, look, you have to change the way you are reporting things, because this is a multiple tumor. So it's not, you can't really record that tumor in that particular way. So see, that's the preliminary work that we've been doing just to get the system in place. And then I'm not a software engineer. So the software engineers created this data parsing system. And I didn't even know what parsing meant before having this registry in place. The data parsing system for ACARCinom is automatically extracting data, transforming data into our standards, and then loading it into the final database. So this means that it's able to actually process millions of data per minute with minimal human intervention. So how is able the system to do that? We train the system with all the analysis that we did before. And then, even though the pathology reports are different, but they're not smart enough, because the things are under headings. So they may have diagnosis, morphological diagnosis, interpretation. Those are keywords that then the software engineer used to construct regular expressions to find the text blocks of interest. After doing it, the data parsing system is scanning the extracted data, finding those keywords using the data dictionary that we provided. And it's also quite nice because it's also identifying issues. So if, for example, during the extraction of data, there is something missing, there is a big dangerous alert saying, look, this data in this record, there is no age, but in a way, I was able to recalculate the age, but this record needs attention because you have to check it. Or for example, the diagnosis is wrong, please check it. So the human intervention is minimal, it's still there because again, the system is not 100% perfect. But with those messages, we are able to identify where the issues are. And then I talk about color coding because it's actually using color coding. So the presentation at the end, before all the data are loaded into the database, is actually by color. So after doing the parsing, it's marking up, the system is marking up the report text with those tags and saying, that's your diagnosis of the tumor. I'm allocating this code. The topography, this one, the certainty level is high because your preference 4 is transformed into a high certainty level. And then the grade, so on and so forth. So at the end of the story, you do have this database of ACARCinom that has been launched last year in November 2023. And it's actually accessible. So you can access the platform through the UQ website. So we do have a dedicated website. And actually, this is how the ACARCinom dashboard looks like. So you can navigate through the dashboard, taking a look at canine or feline cancer data. In the new dashboard, there is New Zealand here because eventually in the future we are getting data from New Zealand as well. So you can have access to the summary of data. So top 10 breeds with tumor. You can also change the state. So, and all the diagrams are changing according to the state, according to the anatomical site or the breed of the tumor. So this is how the dashboard looks like. You can also follow us on our social media. And those are all the partners, I hope to be in time, all the partners involved in the project. I've been very lucky to have had, and you know, it's weird to say from an pathologist perspective, but I've been very lucky to have had an epidemiologist on board because like epidemiologists and pathologists, they do have a different perspective. They think about populations, we think about sample. And there were lots of fights in between us, but it actually was very good in order to build a nice platform that could be useful for both pathologists and epidemiologists. And we also had some oncologists on board. So they came up with other ideas on how to implement our dashboard, because oncologists, they do have a different perspective and they want to get different type or different level of data. So I just want to thank all those partners that are still involved in the project. And our project has been funded by the Australian Research Data Commons, ARDC. And we are extremely grateful that we had such nice support along the way. And that's it. So if you do have any questions, I'm happy to answer all the questions that you may have. Thank you. Okay, Jose.
Well, just happy to see your work.